Well, hello there, fellow oldsters. It's the Big Heavy, and now, don't get offended. I'm right there with you in the oldster demographic, having entered the tail end of my 40s. And frankly, I'm having some of the most fun of my life, both personally, professionally, doing this YouTube thing. And I wanted to talk to you today about starting a YouTube channel in your 40s. And I'll go through some of what I've learned along the way, give you some tips and tricks that are hopefully a little more relevant than some of the stuff that's out there targeting towards younger folks, and maybe help you decide if YouTube's worth it as a potential side hustle, a hobby, or in some cases maybe trying to do this as a full-time career despite being of a more mature demographic, let's say. Now, I ended up starting my own YouTube journey a bit accidentally, quite frankly, in that I rebuilt my detached workshop. I'm sitting in the upstairs of that right now and have a series of videos about that process and that project. And one of the elements of that was putting in a tile floor. And I had a little security camera up on the corner, did a kind of time-lapse video of doing that tiling project, and ended up essentially sharing it with friends and family. And at the time, this was probably 7-8 years ago, I wasn't really smart enough or savvy enough about YouTube to understand how it worked, and I ended up leaving the video public. And it was kind of a dopey video, I put some goofy music behind it, but I came back to YouTube a few years ago and noticed I had a couple hundred subscribers, I had a whole bunch of comments and likes about the video, and was frankly a bit surprised. And that led me a bit down the rabbit hole of, what does it mean to be what is generally referred to as a content creator, which is essentially somebody that does what I'm doing right now, which is, sitting in a room by myself, talking to a camera, and ultimately going through and editing what I produce, posting it to YouTube, and after a little bit of time, and I'll get into some more specifics here, YouTube actually ends up paying you for that content that you produce and end up putting out on the platform. And seeing that people were interested in that, admittedly goofy tiling video kind of had me think through, let's go after this YouTube thing a little bit. I've always had an interest in video, I've had an interest in public speaking, I've had an interest in sharing what little experience and kind of tips and tricks I've learned while migrating through the earth for the last 40+ years. And the possibility of being able to get a few bucks and what's essentially amounts to some beer money out of the deal seemed pretty attractive. So about 18 months ago, I decided to take YouTube a little more seriously and tried to do some more regular publishing, tried to be a little more thoughtful in what I created and produced, but still looking at this as very much a side hustle. It's something where, yes, my goal is to have a revenue stream out of it, but I don't have any illusions about this replacing my full-time job anytime in the foreseeable future. I don't have any illusions about, being the next Mr. Beast, although I'm a bit of a beast sometimes, and making millions and millions of dollars. It's something where it kind of fits that interesting Venn diagram of...
Remember Venn diagrams, those 3 circles? Right, and then let's just see where they overlap.
You will not be surprised because I have constructed a Venn diagram on this. Remember those 3 circles, how they overlap?
Something that gives me new skills, something that I find interesting and fun and productive, and something where I can make a few bucks and where I can approach it as a business to some extent and put some thought into it and think through how I advance this and make it into something that's more than just a hobby that I do purely for fun. So the way YouTube works is it's a classic, what's called a platform business. And this is true of Facebook, a lot of other online type businesses, in that they create a platform, which is essentially a bunch of servers and technology and websites sitting out there somewhere, and they let somebody else produce content that they host on that platform, and they make money for creating that forum where people can exchange, in this case, videos. So when I produce a video and put it out there, YouTube doesn't pay me anything. Where they make money, and essentially I make a small piece of that money, is when you see all the ads, both before these videos and after these videos. So an advertiser, say Ford or Procter & Gamble, or it seems like a lot of insurance companies seem to run during my videos, will contact YouTube and say, hey, I've got this 10-second commercial, here's the audience I want to get, and YouTube's value to those advertisers is essentially they know who you are, they know your age, something about your demographics, and they can go and say to Allstate or Liberty or whoever, I can get your ad in front of 5 million eyeballs of 40-year-old men that like to fly fish, that look like this and have this income level. YouTube will obviously charge those advertisers a fee for that, and that fee is based on how many eyeballs that video appears in front of. So by virtue of the fact that YouTube probably blasted some sort of inane advertising into your eyes before this video rolled, and will probably do so again at some point during this video, that advertiser pays, a couple or 3 cents for that privilege, and YouTube gives me 30% of the proceeds. So that's the fundamentals of the YouTube business model. I produce content and essentially work for YouTube for free in some capacity, and then advertisers pay YouTube. YouTube gives me a cut, and essentially it's not a bad deal. I think that cut is about 30%. You could argue that it's unfair that YouTube takes the lion's share of that, but YouTube has built all the technology, they've built a brand, they do all the searching and algorithm stuff that ultimately gets you arriving here for this high quality content from some jabroni that calls themselves the Big Heavy. Now there's a few hoops you have to jump through before you start to get that check from YouTube. If you post that first video, even if it's some fabulous video of you tiling your garage that lives out in the ether for several years and gets tens of thousands of views, YouTube didn't pay me a cent for that, despite running ads during the course of that video and presumably making some money for themselves out of that. What they require is that you hit some viewership thresholds before you get what they call monetized. And when I did it, I don't know if this is still the case, but you had to have something like 1,000 subscribers and I think 1,000 watch hours. So every month people had to watch 1,000 hours worth of your video, and you had to have 1,000 people mash that subscribe button, which is why every person on YouTube is constantly asking you to hit the like and subscribe buttons, because ultimately that informs that YouTube platform that this type of person likes this type of video, and when they go and try and sell ad placements to the all states of the world, that's kind of their value prop, that they can say, hey, we're able to put your spot in front of these types of people based on all that like and subscribe action. And that's kind of how they figure out who likes what kind of videos and what kind of stuff to roll at the beginning of a video like this. Now, as I mentioned, I've been monetized for about a year. I think I hit the 1,000 subscriber threshold in about January of 2023. And in a typical month, I'll make between 40 and 70 bucks off of the direct YouTube payments, which again come from that advertising. There's also some other revenue streams that are kind of ancillary but related to having a YouTube channel. One of them that I use is what's called Amazon Associates. Essentially all those links you see for products in my video descriptions, and this is pretty typical on YouTube, that link out to Amazon. They have a little tracking capability in there, so Amazon knows that I sent you to this particular product, and they give you between a 1% and 3% cut of the purchase price of that product. Now that doesn't raise the price for you or anything, but essentially, to some extent, I'm acting as a shill for Amazon by referring you to their site to buy something that I mentioned. Depending on the month, that's another 20 to, I think in my best month ever, I had like 200 bucks of affiliate revenue. And the final piece of the puzzle when it comes to YouTube, and this is not something that I yet have enough volume for to engage in, but a lot of people will get channel sponsorships. So when you see somebody, in the middle of their video telling you about some razor brand or some sort of funky green powder that's supposed to make you stronger, better, faster, whatever, they're probably getting a direct payment from that manufacturer for what is essentially a product placement. And there's a whole bunch of variations of this. Some of the big YouTube people like Logan Paul, who I don't really think is a wonderful human, but he's gone out and created some energy drink with that Prime stuff. Mr. Beast has his candy bars and at some point had cheeseburgers or something like that. So there's this whole other world of merch and product placements and all this other stuff. But I think that at least for me is a little bit too much complexity, and I don't have the subscriber base right now to support something like that. So when you're getting started, probably the easiest revenue streams are the obvious one with the direct YouTube revenue, that Amazon Associates thing. I'm not sure how complex it is to sign up for these days or what kind of requirements there are. When I signed up, it was pretty light, but that's a pretty easy way to get, again, a beer money kind of revenue stream each month. So that's essentially the upside, at least as a smaller channel. And when I talk to people, particularly in their 40s that maybe have a full-time job and are at the midpoint of their careers, they're frankly kind of surprised that at the end of the day, it's 100 bucks plus or minus for a fairly small channel at that 1,500-ish subscriber mark, getting that 1,000-ish hours of view time each month. Which leads me to my first tip, and that's thinking through, is YouTube a medium that you're interested in? And what I mean by a medium, if you think of an artist or something, artists could be photographers where they go and take pictures of, beautiful landscapes. Artists could be painters where, they go out and see the same beautiful landscape and they might paint it with oils, they might sketch it with pencils, they might use watercolors. There's, almost an infinite amount of different tools you could use to capture that landscape and share it with other people. And by the same token, there's people that, equally or maybe even have a deeper love and appreciation for landscapes, but they just want to walk out or, drive out or whatever, look at the landscape and kind of file it away in the memory bank and not share it with anyone. So I would consider, is YouTube a medium that you're interested in? Maybe you like to talk about politics, maybe you like to talk about home improvement, whatever it is you like to talk about, you have different options for the medium that you can share it in. You can sit here and talk to the goofy Sony box that I'm talking to right now. I could go and write an essay on Medium or one of the other platforms that's out there where, again, there's a potential revenue stream where you get a cut of whatever advertising fees or subscription fees that platform generates. Or maybe I just like to think about these issues or practice home improvement or hiking or photography or whatever, and I don't necessarily feel some strong need to share that out in the world. And the reason that's important is because different mediums require different skill sets, they require different degrees of equipment, and in some cases, like YouTube, it's a not insignificant lift. Even if you're just going to sit here and talk to the phone that you already have and kind of produce a quick phone video, you've got to go out and edit that video, you've got to create a thumbnail, you've got to post the thing. If you ultimately want to get monetized on YouTube, you've got to sort of watch your stats and all this stuff. So there's an overhead to each of these mediums, and there's also some benefits and drawbacks. I personally like public speaking. I personally kind of enjoy the editing and technology aspect of producing a video for YouTube. But if I didn't like that stuff, $100, $200 a month, the juice is not worth the proverbial squeeze in that case. So think through those different mediums and whether YouTube's a medium that you're kind of interested in exploring a little bit further. The second tip I'd give you is think about what you ultimately want to say. Why do you think that you want a YouTube channel? What do you think you're going to put out there that's interesting and ultimately get people to go and engage with it, assuming that that's the medium that you want to pursue? And there's a whole bunch of theories about this. The typical theory that you'll find if you do a little research on this is that you should find a specific niche and you should be, a camera review guy or gal, or you should be, a Linux operating system guy or gal, or you should be the, the person that builds decks and creates videos about building decks and that sort of thing. And the general advice is to find that niche, stick to it, and just, dig the heck out of that single trench. I consciously didn't want to do that. I think in my life in general, I have a variety of hobbies, I have a variety of different interests. And my assumption was there's other people out there like me that, don't want to build their whole life around, cameras or build their whole life around sports cars or whatever. They might one day be interested in camping, another day be interested in power banks, and a third day be interested in how to start a YouTube channel in their 40s. I don't have any solid data on whether that was the right or wrong approach. I guess if I really wanted to test this, I'd start a secondary channel where I'd just focus on one particular niche and see which one grows faster, but I ain't got time for that. But where people go wrong, I think, with YouTube is they don't necessarily think through, what is my niche? What do I have to say? How am I going to say it? Why am I bringing some sort of different perspective or voice to YouTube that's going to interest people and get them to ultimately, watch those videos and generate that, albeit paltry, revenue stream? And they initially jump right into, what cameras do I need? What lights do I need? How do I edit and the software and all the technical aspects versus, what are the things I'm going to say? And as you start to consider a YouTube channel or, any sort of creative outlet, I would get a little writing bank going. I have some notes on this guy and a program that I use on all my other devices. And if an idea pops into my head when I'm, out for a run or, sitting in the car or whatever, I'll take a quick note and write that down. And I have this big old bank of ideas and, probably 5% of them ultimately turn into videos that get published out on YouTube. But, there's a constant wellspring of content out there. And that's what keeps me excited and interested. If you try that experiment and say, hey, I'm gonna start, the best channel about building tables, and your little idea pool, it's a struggle to come up with one or two things, then either you maybe don't have something to say in that domain, or YouTube's not the right medium, or maybe you're someone that just appreciates the act of building tables versus the act of sharing how to build tables. The third tip I give you is make sure you have the right goals starting out with YouTube. Again, the biggest surprise that people express when I tell them about my YouTube channel is how small the revenue stream is. You know, again, it's $100 in a decent month between the YouTube stuff and the Amazon stuff. I have heard of people that are kind of in my similar demographic, but are a little further along in their YouTube channels where, you know, it gets to be 50, 60 grand a year, and it's, you know, kind of a full-time side hustle, and, you know, that's obviously a legit amount of revenue. But at least in your first, you know, 2 years, unless you're way better at this than I am, it's not going to be life-changing kind of money. So if you're starting out thinking, you know, by week 7, I'm gonna be raking in 100K a month, your goals are probably not realistic. And if you're okay with, you know, not exactly making life-changing sort of money, make sure that YouTube is fulfilling some other goals of yours. You know, for me, that's things like, how do I improve my presentation skills, my public speaking? How do I learn more about video editing and kind of crafting a story and, you know, using some of these new digital tools? And then also, how do I learn kind of the economics and the techniques of navigating a platform business as a participant? You know, YouTube is probably one of the leading platform businesses out there. I'm one tiny cog in this giant machine, and it's sort of interesting to see the interplay of, you know, a small creator like myself, seeing some of the other larger creators that I've, you know, tried to learn from and admire, and just kind of seeing how all this stuff works together. There is a bit of a dark side to, you know, YouTube being this monstrous platform, and that they can rather arbitrarily, you know, shut your channel off. They own the platform. You know, there have been cases where people with tens of thousands of subscribers, you know, just arbitrarily get their channel turned off because they offended some YouTube policy. You know, as the owner of the platform, YouTube can and has created, you know, what I believe are arbitrary and sometimes ridiculous rules. And, you know, that's their prerogative. And if you don't like it, you know, you can either leave the platform and go somewhere else, you can start your own platform, or you can kind of go on Reddit and rage against the machine, which, you know, doesn't seem to offer much of a result. And despite the fact that, you know, YouTube isn't going to make life-changing money for myself or my family in the immediate future, I do still treat it as a business. And what I mean by that is, you know, I have all my YouTube stuff structured in separate bank accounts. Before I create a video, you know, I do try and think through, are people going to watch this? Is this going to be a successful video? You know, how do I create thumbnails that people are interested in? And ultimately, in addition to developing some of those skills that I talked about, my goal is to put stuff out there that, you know, has long-term revenue potential, and that does eventually get to a point where, you know, hopefully this is, you know, maybe not life-changing money, but it's more than, you know, a case of beer a month, and maybe it's you know, a couple bottles of some high-quality wine or something like that. Now, the final tip I'll give you around starting YouTube in your 40s is just go out there and do it. You know, there's this interesting idea that as your experience in a domain increases, your willingness to take risks decreases. And I don't know if it's a 1-to-1 ratio, there's probably a lovely graph out there somewhere. But when you're in your, you know, 40s, you're kind of halfway through life. So you got some experience under your belt. You sort of know what's going on. You know, you've done some amazing things in the past, and sometimes with great success, sometimes with, you know, abject failure along the way. Maybe you're like me and have a few kids and a family to support. So perhaps the negative that comes along with all that experience and all that knowledge is you may be a little less willing to try something new or to take a risk. And the good news about YouTube is it's a pretty low bar in terms of risk. You know, on one extreme, you could go and quit your job and take your life savings and buy the best cameras and hire editors and do all this stuff. And I've, you know, actually heard of people putting 50 grand into their brand new YouTube channel and seeing it, you know, fail miserably after producing, you know, frankly, beautiful and lovely content. But rather than doing that, you know, if you're thinking of YouTube, take the phone you already have that probably has a decent to quite good video camera capability and record at least 3 videos. The reason I suggest doing 3 is because that'll kind of force you to think through what your content's going to look like. It'll hopefully force you to do a little editing, you know, maybe put a thumbnail out there. And what's interesting about trying anything new is you get exponentially better with each effort. You know, your first video is probably going to be garbage. You know, your second one's going to be like 80% better just by virtue of the fact that you're now getting 100% more experience. Your third one will be even better because now you've maybe figured out, you know, hey, I have to put some keywords in here, or, you know, I need a thumbnail and not just the random frame grab that YouTube gives me. You'll get to work with the YouTube interface a little bit. You'll get to know your phone video a little bit better. Maybe your first video will be out of focus and you'll figure out how to get the focus right for your second one. But it's a pretty low bar, and you can put that stuff out there. If you absolutely hate it and you later have a fantastic channel, you can go and delete it. I'd recommend against that. It's kind of fun to go back and look at some of the stuff I initially put out there and see how I've grown and improved throughout this YouTube process. But I think there's nothing better with trying something new than actually getting out and doing it, particularly if there's almost no cost or large barrier to entry. So having thought through those 4 areas, again, I would re-emphasize, just get out there and give it a try if you have any even middling interest. Going out and actually creating 3 videos will do 1,000 times more than watching 500 hours of stuff on YouTube on how to create videos, how to grow your channel, all that stuff. And most of that stuff's pretty good. There's a lot of clickbaity stuff out there. There's a lot of people that have 6 bazillion subscribers, creating a video about how I got 6 million subscribers on my brand new channel in 2 months. Well, they did it because they already had a platform and all this other stuff. But I believe there's no better teacher than experience. So if you're thinking about this stuff, go out there. If you want to try it out, leave your channel in the comments. I'll go and click through and watch a video or two. Mash the subscribe button. I'll do the same for you if you decide to give this a roll. And frankly, the world needs more of us experienced / mature / old / whatever you want to call us type folks out there.
I'm in my prime. Yeah, you look it.
Hopefully sharing some constructive advice and keeping those youngins in line. So with that, this is the Big Heavy wishing you well in all your experimentations, whatever they may be. Again, admonishing you to get out there, put together 3 videos, throw them up on a channel and see what happens. If you do decide that YouTube's not your jam, find some other little creative outlet, even if it's as simple as writing some essays for yourself that you never publish anywhere. I think one thing that's brought a lot of richness to my sort of second half of my life is trying to focus more on creating and doing creative things, even if I have a job that doesn't always let me do wacky stuff like produce videos or share my random thoughts on low-grade nonsense with good folks like yourself. So be well, be awesome, and wish you much joy and peace in whatever endeavors that you embark upon. Big Heavy, out. Ever wonder why every talking head on YouTube asks you to hit the like and subscribe button at the end of their video? You were right, because we're living in a computer simulation. And our benevolent robotic overlords get just a little bit of energy every time you hit that like. So do me, the rest of civilization, and our benevolent robotic overlords a favor. Mash that subscribe, be kind to each other, keep living your simulated dreams.